welcome to a brand new Ammach program. You're in for an interesting ride. This is the Ammach Files, hosted by peoplesinternetradio.com.
Hello and welcome to program 35 of the Ammach Files. And just in case you didn't know, it's Tuesday and it's a little bit more after 11 p.m. than I thought it might be. And it's the 16th of June 2015. And welcome. Well, how are you all? We've had a bit more sunshine around here. Hallelujah. You know, I sometimes think of all of us and those others pushing through with their thinking and making a difference, really pushing through with their own challenges as well. You know, with the status quo and just insisting on their right to sovereignty. That with all that this journey is, it's a real hero and heroine's journey. And you know what? We've all made it this far. Let's hang on in there. One of the things that I do with Ammach from time to time is put people in touch with one another, and that's quite normal for support, for further support that I can't necessarily give or don't have time to do. And I think it's fantastic that this provides another level or layer of understanding and support and communication. Well, I'm also really delighted to announcement that a couple of wonderful people that I introduced to one another a year or two back, I can't even remember now, have found support with each other, but they've also found something else. They found love. Yeah, isn't that great? Already really hoped that I would have an Ammach marriage going on. So I'm keeping who it is quiet. I'm keeping mum on that score to let them enjoy their newfound love and their forthcoming marriage together. So you two guys know who you are. So lots of love and congratulations to you. And I am absolutely thrilled. We have so much to deal with, so, you know, truly we're all warriors in our own way, and it really warms my heart to know that somewhere that Ammach and I made the difference, and that if I'd never started it, those folks would probably never have ever met. So, isn't that lovely? So that brings me nicely to my guest for this evening, who is the lovely Chelsea Cooley, all the way over in California. Now, Chelsea contacted me around about 2 years ago, early, I think, 2013. Now, she has had some interesting and quite different experiences that she would say were reptilian in nature, but also dealt with some very dark areas of society linking with drugs and all kinds of different things that are challenging for us as we find our way through our identities, who we are, and what it means to be human, and what it means to be sovereign, which is always a big thing for me when I'm thinking and working with experiences, and I know here on PIR, it's absolutely crucial. So Chelsea also, I'm delighted to announce, is a newlywed, so congratulations to Chelsea, and we'll be speaking to her shortly about that and her new life as well. So Chelsea spent some time recently in Germany, where she got married, and is now back in California. Now, she called me again recently because she has a couple of co-workers, we'd say colleagues here, who are having predation by reptilians. And interestingly enough, it's where they're seeing and having these experiences seems to be on a property that has become somewhat famous or infamous in the San Jose area of California called Hellier House. Nothing to do with Paul Hellier, of course, but it is known as one of the most haunted houses in California. where I think there was at least one suicide, and I don't know, rumor has a couple of murders. But in any event, her colleagues actually saw in broad daylight, as far as I understand it, and Chelsea can correct me if I'm wrong, full sight in 3D of a couple of reptilians. And those ladies have since been having some difficulty and challenging experiences with them. Now, we're going to be talking and exploring all about that and what that may mean. And if there's any of you out there in the chat room or anywhere else who wants to phone in and ask Chelsea or myself about any of this, please do. Some people think that by speaking about this and perhaps being shown to corroborate it by listening to these stories, corroborate it meaning the story, the tale, the testimony, that underpins an innate belief that this is what must be happening. The fact is, we can only go with the testimony of ourselves, and I think we owe it to one another to listen, and then we can bring our fantastic skills and compassion to bear on all of that. Now, Chelsea was also with me just under a couple of years ago now, probably about 18 months ago or less, in New York, where I think it was Leopard Films were going to make a pilot of the work that I do, which I was known for a couple of years back, which particularly was interviewing people one-to-one on camera about their experiences. So the Americans brought Suzanne Chancellor, who we've spoken to already, Chelsea, and another gentleman from Canada over to do a pilot show. And I don't know what it is about people. It seems that we have a need to show a lot of distress, a lot of contention, and a lot of aggravation, otherwise we don't feel we're being entertained. So sadly, the Leopard film team really took that tack as well and tried to get a lot of contention going between the people as we were speaking or interviewing. And so, of course, it absolutely fell flat, and what a wasted opportunity. But anyway, I have to say it was great to have Chelsea there supporting me in my efforts, so that was great. So we're going to speak to Chelsea just after her first choice of song. And it is called Brightest Hour, and it is by the Submarines. And I think that's, I'm not sure of the year about that one, but anyway, we're in for about 4 minutes of The Brightest Hour. I'll see you after the show. Show song. Well, you know, it was kind of a little bit apt, Chelsea. Welcome to the Ammach Files. Both our faces went, oh my God, what was that? Well, some people may like it, but it's not. It wasn't what we wanted, eh?
No.
Anyway, Chelsea, as I said, welcome to the Ammach Files. Nice to have you on. And Chelsea, take us back to the beginning of your experiences. I just think it's really great if people can hear a bit of a timeline about your experiences. And still, you're really young, and you've had so much happen to you already. So I think it's important that people know that it happens at all ages, at all times, and some experiences can be really intense from quite a young age. So tell us how it was right at the beginning.
Well, in the beginning, I was being visited by a specific reptilian being. It's been, for me, one reptilian the entire time that's kind of targeted me and chosen, I guess, to follow me and stalk me and harass me my entire life. So it started when I was a child, and I would wake up in the middle of the night and hear scratching on the window and just have this very strange and terrifying feeling as a child of something watching you outside of your window. And my bed used to be right next to the window. So sometimes I'd wake up and I'd look out my window and I would see a reptilian looking at me, just staring.
I mean, so are we talking about 3D, or are we talking about dreams or visions?
No, it was 3D. It was there, and you could hear it walking around on the pool deck outside of my window as well. And my sister also would scream in the middle of the night and see things as well. So that started very early on. In my earliest recollection, very clear memory would be 8 years old, when I saw him very clearly that it wasn't human, but it was very strange because sometimes he would come looking like a young human as well. So I was very confused if it was two different people, but now I know it's actually the same being, and I know his identity, and it took me a very long time to figure that out. But he had visited me my entire childhood, and sometimes very strange things would happen also with the window itself to my bedroom, where the screen have claw marks in it and be cut up. And I don't know what could make that kind of cut mark on the screen window. And even my mother admitted that that was very strange and it didn't really make sense. So we had to replace the screen many times for my window. I think it was 5 times or something, like total. It was a lot.
Were you able to speak to your parents about it to kind of vocalize what was going on?
At the time, they had me in a special program at school. They thought I was a special needs student. And so anything that I said, they thought it was just a hyperactive imagination. So they dismissed what I said. They thought I was just having nightmares. But I kept telling them, this is real. I know this is real, because why is the screen getting scratched up? And then because they were dismissing it, it seemed to be happening in greater frequency, where he would be there for maybe an hour in the beginning, and then he would leave. And then it started to be that he would be there for hours at a time. And I would just be awake looking at him and wondering, what are you doing? And getting very scared. So I started having a baseball bat underneath my bed. And when I took that out, he started to leave. And sometimes I'd have to go down the hall and go to my sister's room with a baseball bat, because there'd be another reptilian or some guy out there as well. So they didn't really take it seriously. And as a child, I had to defend myself, protect myself, and I had no idea how to handle the situation, obviously, being a child, and everyone just saying it was in my imagination, but it was happening every single night.
And what about your sister, Chelsea? Did she tell your parents as well, or did you both tell them together? And if so, what response?
We both came forward, but then my sister stopped talking about it because she was so afraid. And she just shut down eventually, because it wasn't happening to her all the time. But since our windows and our bedrooms were so close, it was definitely checking in on her as well, because it was easy to do that. And her bed was also directly underneath the window. So my parents, they moved the bed back from the window, hoping that maybe it's just we were having a nightmare and that would stop. But of course, instead of that happening, the reptilian being outside the window, it started coming inside of the bedroom. And I'm not sure how, maybe by teleportation. I have no idea how they actually got inside. I don't know if they opened the door. I mean, I did hear the door unlock a couple times, so I would imagine they were just walking in. And there was a time when I caught them, and you could hear them walking on the roof. And that was the only time that my father really started to become aware that this was a real situation, because he heard them walking on the roof. So he came out with his gun, and they ran away, but they weren't able to actually see them because they disappeared so quickly. And that was when I was 13 that he got a firsthand experience, really realizing that something strange was happening. We were definitely getting stalked by something, but he thought it was just by some people from the road or just some younger men or whatever.
Had your parents had any unusual experience, or had there been any paranormal activity or different activity in the house then, Chelsea, by any chance?
My father was always aware of the existence of extraterrestrials because he was followed by a UFO when he was in his early 20s. He was followed for 3 miles driving on his way to Monterey on Highway 1. And he remembers that experience very vividly, and that he started feeling very sick after that experience. And interestingly enough, he actually had testicular cancer very shortly after that event. So he always kind of had a suspicion that they did something to him, and he always equated it with that experience. So he told all of us when we were children that he had seen a UFO. He knew that they were real. He didn't know what their agenda was. He knew for himself that it wasn't a good experience that he had, but he could not make sense of what was happening to my sister and I at night. And I think he was also very tired because he had a lot of health issues. So it was a lot for him to try to handle the situation, especially since my mother at the time was very close-minded. So that made the situation on the entire family very difficult, because everyone was very undecided as to, is it real? And if it's real, what do we do? And I think everyone just really was feeling powerless in that situation. So nothing really got done. And
I was going to say, and was your sister put on special measures for education as well, or was it just yourself?
it was just myself because I was speaking an alien language when I was a child. I was born speaking that language, and
You mean you came out of the womb speaking that language, or?
yes,
Really?
and they thought I wasn't able to speak English, and I was demonstrating to them I could speak English, but I also knew this other language, and why can't you guys get hip with that? And
so tell me about that. You mean from like a baby, you were making intelligible sounds, but not English sounds,
yes.
and for you, that was a language that you innately knew. Do you still know that language?
Yeah, absolutely. I can speak that language fluently. And interestingly enough, I met somebody at the New Living Expo who could speak in the same exact language. It's Ammach. It's an Andromedan language.
Oh,
And
okay.
we were speaking fluently to each other, and the whole entire conversation, people were starting to crowd around and listen because they could understand we were having a real conversation. And that was very exciting.
Was that the first time you've ever met a fellow Andromedan? Or are you
Yes.
an Andromedan? I'm assuming if you're speaking Andromedan, you might be Andromedan.
Well, Andromeda is a place where all beings come together. It's sort of like the universal hub. So it's not like a particular race comes from there. It's sort of like, the ambassador. Yeah. So that language is known by all beings as far as what I've been told by the actual alien beings, Zetas specifically. And so that's why I think I was speaking that language, because it's understood. So if any kind of alien were to come to me right now, I'd be able to have a conversation with them because they all understand Ammach. So that was the language I was speaking. I was speaking that as well, and that did keep me very safe when I was speaking.
Would you be communicating with these reptilians in that language, or would you be too small at one point? Well, at 8, you wouldn't be too small to speak, but I don't know whether there was communication. You said you were lots of looking, but did they communicate in any way, either telepathically or otherwise?
The reptilians were using their reptilian language with me, and in a way, I guess they were teaching me at a young age because I started being able to speak back to them in their language. I don't know if they were giving me mental transmission, but they also connect psychically as well. They usually project an image into your mind before they try to contact you. For instance, recently, one of my family members had a very vivid dream of something like a vampire, which is basically a reptilian, but just cast in a different way and put a lot of different mythology around. And it was bearing its fangs. So that's a way of them to introduce themselves to you, first through the mind and then verbally or physically. That's usually how I've seen that it's working with people.
Yeah, you said recently, I think it was just recently, you were able to speak finally to your mother about your experiences. And we'll go into those in a minute, but what was her response to know that you'd been having these, virtually almost all your life?
I think there's a lot of resistance and fear, like at the deepest level of people when you talk about these things, because they can feel it and they know that it's true. They know that this is real, but because they don't have a context to understand, they don't know what they're dealing with. So they are open to hearing the information, especially in recent times. I would say in the past few months, it's really accelerated that people are open to hear this, but they just don't understand what is the proper thing to do about it. So she was open to me, she listened to me, and I explained to her about my hybrid children. And I think that's kind of difficult for a parent to know that, you have grandchildren living on some other planet and here on this planet, but you've never met them. And so I think that might be more emotional and psychologically affecting her than she actually realizes when I told her these things. So she's still processing, and I would imagine it takes a long time to process this. It took me my entire life to process all of this. So I can't imagine, just coming in finally open up and speaking about what the reality is of the situation, what has actually been happening with her daughter. And to hear that, like with all of the information, it's going to take time.
And what about your sister? Does she know that your sister's had some encounters as well?
Yes. Back when we were younger, we were talking about the lizard men, and I was always talking about them, and I knew their names, and I was saying their names back then. And there was a conversation happening about that. But my sister, she was just seeing them mostly as men, I think, like in their cloak, their human cloak. So for her, it was kind of a different experience. But now recently, we've been talking to each other about all of those things in the past and kind of piecing it all together. Because when you're a child and these things are happening, it's very traumatic. And it can be very off-putting. So you don't know how to handle it until you're an adult and you finally have that emotional and verbal skill to work it out. So that's what we're doing recently.
Okay, so but I was just thinking, because your mother, of course, well, I imagine she would have known that your father would have told her about his own experiences. And interesting that you mentioned the testicular cancer, because I've met at least one other man who's had that issue as a result, I think, of encounters. And other people with other traumatic health issues because of encounters as well. So, whatever people think, it does seem to have a real impact on the physiology of us. And that's what we need to kind of get on with. I heard someone speaking today on an interview about a lady who had broken several bones, and she was an experiencer. I can't think of the detail of it. It's just I caught my attention because of the healing involved. And apparently in the evening or night, she'd had these greys come around her, and amazingly, the very next day, she was completely healed of all her broken bones. Every single one of them. There'd been quite a few. Can't think what the incident was or whatever. But anyway, someone was making the comment, was saying, well, that's a miracle. And it is indeed for us at the moment, it is, we consider it a miracle. But then someone said, well, if you were a farmer looking after your animals, wouldn't you take care of your prize herd? Wouldn't you take care, of course, of your prize cow? Not that I want to be thinking of us as cows or herds, but it was an interesting point. So, I thought that was just an interesting one that I heard just before I came on the show with you. But let's move a little bit forward then, Chelsea. I don't know if your education was impacted further by, your experiences, in that you were really not able to, develop your educational platform much. Perhaps you can tell us a little bit about that. Excuse me.
Basically had to prove myself as a child that I was worthy of being treated like other children, and that was very difficult. I had to stop talking about the things I was seeing in order to have any kind of freedom to social children as a child myself. And so in elementary school, that was the most difficult time because I had nobody to speak to, and I had to figure out all of this stuff on my own. What are these things that are visiting me? Why are they coming into my room at night? And they were taking blood and like dropping it in my fingers by putting these cuts on all of my hands, and I'd wake up with bloody hands every morning. And to go to school like that, and then like you just don't know what's going on. And so that was a challenge.
Absolutely. That's very hard for a child to bear. Do you know if you have unusual genetics or blood groups, Chelsea?
In terms of science and going to doctors, no. Yes. I think it's pretty basic. Yes.
Yeah, pretty normal.
Yeah, my blood type is something really generic, and there's nothing really different, but I do come from a family that has a very extensive military background, and they have made some tremendous contributions to the U.S. Navy and to the U.S. Air Force on both sides of my family, on my father's side and on my mother's side. Both of my grandfathers forefathers, they were developing technology for warfare, which kind of changed the game. So when I meet somebody from the military, they know my last name. They know Cooley. They know the contribution of Cooley to U.S. military success and warfare, and they understand that probably way better than I do. And so that's something that might be a bit different, just the family background and the historical legacy of military service is the biggest thing that I'm aware of that's different about myself.
Yeah. Okay, so what did you grow up and go on to study then, Chelsea?
I went into anthropology when I was in college. I wanted to study what does it mean to be human, especially with all these things that are not human. Well, what is the difference? And how can I understand myself and my human family better to approach this thing that I'm experiencing that much more effectively? So at the time, everybody thought that's crazy, you know, you're not going to get any work or anything like that. But I was really interested in research and learning about different cultures and how the planet works and how humans are a part of it. And that was really my passion, because the way I felt like I was isolated and cast out of, you know, human society and culture my entire childhood. So that was kind of my time to make up for that. And in college, I went to San Francisco State, and it was a perfect environment for me to meet people from different cultures and spend time socializing and learning what joy can come from that. So it was a really positive experience for me. And in high school, I also demonstrated academic success tremendously. They were saying, okay, you have to be in a special study program. And when I was in the special study program, I was passing all my tests with very good marks. And that really helped me to get more freedom back. But it took me until my teenage years to really, you know, push back against the system and finally have the ability to just go out and be around other kids during lunchtime and meet people. Because before that, I was completely closed down.
And how long did you have the reptilian experiences for, interaction for, from childhood? How many years did that last?
It was every single year. That since 8, it was very clear. And I remember until present, it's been nonstop, basically. There was a short period of time when I was left alone, and that was because I was moving around a lot. And that seemed to be the only thing to keep them away. When I was living in Colorado a couple years ago, and I was so scared with all these things that were happening and the threatening photos I was getting and the threatening videos from the specific reptilian stalker. He was sending me videos of a basement in a house randomly and saying at the bottom of it, this is where you'll be living the rest of your life.
So can we just rewind there a little bit, because we haven't sort of picked up with that. So this person, is this somebody that you've known from childhood who's a shapeshifter, or somebody who is working with the reptilians? Can you explain a little bit about who they are?
He is currently, from what I understand, a part of the United States military still. And he is a shapeshifter. And I'm sure that they're aware of that, because he is also involved in Black Ops projects and Area 51. And he is also the father of my hybrid reptilian children. I have 4 hybrid reptilian children with him. And he sent 2 of them to, which I found out recently, to Area 51 to be trained as super soldiers against their will. So they've been there since they were born, and I have had no access to them at all. And he is highly respected by pretty much everyone. He has actually a following on YouTube, and he's well known, and many women are interested in him. He's a very popular guy. But people, I don't think, are aware that he is not what he appears to be.
And is this someone who contacted you from a very early age?
No, he didn't contact me in a way that was exposing himself to me, like I'm your friend or something like that. He came to me later when I was in college. He approached me online, and we became friends when we started talking, and we were talking every day at a certain point. And I thought he was just a very intelligent, very, very nice guy back then. And we were talking a lot, and it started becoming sort of a romantic relationship back then. But I didn't really realize that he and I had associations before. I didn't really recognize him from my childhood. Yeah, because he looked different, obviously, in a human form when I saw him later.
Sorry, just to clarify, is this the same person then who, when you saw a reptilian at 8 years old, sometimes you'd also then see a human, a young human? Was this him?
It's the same.
It's the same person.
Yes.
Okay, so mainly he'd show in his reptilian form, but then he'd swap now and again. Would he change form in front of you?
It's really hard to explain when I met him in person, because I actually did meet him in person willingly when I was in college, and I was pregnant at the time with my boyfriend's child at the time. And so he made an effort to come and see me in California. And at that time, I saw him in his hotel room, and he basically forced an abortion somehow. And he sort of uncloaked for a minute, and I could only see his claws on the floor, and he had drugged me. And so that's how I knew for sure it was him, because I was able to see him shapeshifted for a slight moment, and I got a glimpse of his face, and I recognized that face and those eyes because they were looking down on me my entire life. So I knew it was him. But there's so many missing memories and missing time when you have these kinds of experiences, because they drug you and they have very advanced technology to make you forget the things that you have seen.
And just going back to this aborted child, was this something that just happened eventually after that meeting, that you lost the child, or it was aborted, or was it somehow a different kind of miscarriage situation?
My doctor was very concerned because she had never seen something like that before. She was monitoring my pregnancy, and I had seen her, gosh, a couple days before. And then I came back in, and it was a clean abortion, basically. And she had never seen that before. Usually there's like an indication that you were pregnant before. There was nothing. And she couldn't understand that because she had seen me like a couple days prior.
And how many weeks were you pregnant?
I was actually 3 months pregnant.
Oh,
and he gave me something in my drink, I think, but I have no idea how this technology works, because I did see the fetus when it came out, and it was cut, and I don't even understand how that happens. And so I told my doctor that, and I said, what could possibly do that? And she said, I have no idea. I've never heard of anything like that before. That's very unusual. So he subjected me to a lot of very terrifying and horrible experiences. And I think the reason why he specifically had is because it wasn't his, and he's very protective and possessive when it comes to me and the right to have me as the one bearing his children. He's chosen me for that. So it's some kind of breeding program, and he has refused to give up on that possibility of me giving him children. So if I were to try to have another man's child, that's just not acceptable to him. And that's what he told me before that. So it should have been a warning sign to me. And I hope that people realize when somebody says something to you and it seems very strange, you should really question what they mean by that. Even if it seems completely out of context, you could be dealing with some kind of reptilian or some crazy person that's trying to let you know their intentions before they do something bad to you.
Okay, so Chelsea, let's just go back to the time, because it's kind of interesting that that you initially were telling me about in those couple of years ago. And you were describing, and I can't remember the whole detail, I didn't find my notes for that in time, but maybe you can just walk us through what was going on involving the drug scene. So just set that tale for us going.
When I was a teenager, my father had passed away. He had heart issues after he had survived testicular cancer, I'm sorry. And he passed when I was younger, and that was very rough financially, of course, because he ran a dental practice with my mother. So he owned that practice, and that was their livelihood. That's how they supported us. So when he left, my mother didn't know what to do. So I got approached, actually, when I was in high school by what was a reptilian at the time, which I thought was just a man, but in his 30s, but he actually was not what he appeared to be. And he said, I know you are having financial issues. I've never met this guy before. He just came and said, I know you're having financial issues. I have a solution for you. You just need to work for me, and you can't ask questions. But I'm going to give you thousands and thousands of dollars. You're going to be able to pay the mortgage.
And how old would you be, Chelsea, at this point?
I was 15 then. So he gave me a job, and that job was running drugs. So I was doing that.
Did you know what that was, what you were doing? Did you know what that entailed at the beginning?
I had no idea until I made my first delivery. Because at the time, they just said, wear this backpack and run from downtown San Jose to Los Gatos, downtown Los Gatos. And I thought, okay, no problem. I just run. Like, no problem. You're going to pay me all this money to run. I had no idea about these things because I was raised religious, and I had no idea, like, what drugs really were. I had no idea about trafficking or anything. So when I drop off the backpack, I see them unzip it, and then there's like a big, brick of cocaine in there, and I knew I was in trouble after that point. And you can't stop once you work for these people. They're not allowing you to leave because you've seen too much. So they basically had me doing it, and there was no way for me to leave that. And they also had me very heavily on drugs. Very hallucinogenic and mind-altering drugs at that age. And I was working for them, and it was a very terrifying experience. And I tried to leave many times. And when I tried to leave, that's when they hurt me very, very physically and damaged me quite a lot with my physical body.
So are we talking about human beings here who had you drug running for a period of time? How long was it?
I would imagine it's so hard to tell, like, with the timeline, because everything gets very confusing from that point on, because then from there I went off planet, which is a whole nother story. But that was probably at least a year total, or maybe more, that I was working for them. And it wasn't just humans. There were humans that I was working with, but my bosses were reptilian shapeshifters.
And so how did you get to know that as a fact?
They started uncloaking in front of me when I was on drugs, and they thought I was going to forget because I was on drugs, and I didn't. And they were very upset about that, because usually it happens that people do forget instantly, and I didn't. And then he started uncloaking himself fully. I would see him as a reptilian, more than 6 feet tall, just standing there in the room, making weird noises, acting like a maniac. And he stopped caring that I saw him, because they knew I was afraid. And so they were feeding off of that energy, and they kept doing it. And they didn't really mind, because they were saying, oh, he's going to come looking for you if we do something to you. Like, there's nobody that cares about you, so you're ours. Like, I don't care if you see me like this. That's what he told me.
So were you at this time living with your mother and sister?
Yes. It was just the 3 months.
Okay, and did they keep their end of the bargain? Did they help you pay the mortgage and stuff like that?
Absolutely. That's why we still have the house today.
Okay, so what did your mother think that you were doing?
Well, she didn't ask questions. I was leaving money, cash for her, and I wasn't saying it was me leaving it. I would just leave it in her bedroom when she wasn't there, stacks. And I don't know what she did with that money. And I'm sure that she was very confused, but also very relieved at the same time, because things were getting solved. But there would be weeks where I'd be gone, and no one would know where I was. I wouldn't come home at night. And I was a young teen. So it was true, what the reptilians were saying. Nobody was going to come look for me when I disappeared. And they didn't, actually, when I did.
But what about your school? Wouldn't they have questions? Wouldn't they?
In a sense, I think they were covering up for that, as strange as that is, because when I went, I was curious about that too, because I was trying to figure out what days I was gone when I came back, you know, how many days I was gone. And I checked with attendance. Well, how many days did I miss? I must have been gone like 4 weeks. And they said, no, you have perfect attendance. I'm like, how's that possible? But then when I talked to the fellow students in my class, they say, where were you for the past 4 weeks? And only one teacher that I had, she was very concerned and scared. Where have you been? It's been weeks and weeks. You haven't been here. And so she kind of helped me to really realize that this is something serious and real that's going on. And I'm not just going crazy, because she started really questioning, why is the school doing this? Why are they saying you have perfect attendance? She said, I didn't submit that. I was saying you were absent for the past 4 weeks. I don't understand why they're saying that.
And where did your mother think you were?
She didn't ask questions. She thought I was at my friend's house, who lives in town at the time, because I was basically allowed to sleep there whenever I wanted. I had a very close relationship with family. So I'm guessing that she was assuming I was there every single night, but in actuality I wasn't there very much at all.
Okay, that's really interesting. What about your sister? Was she involved in any way in any of this, or was she able to?
She was left alone because I asked for them to leave her alone. Specifically, when I started working for them with the whole drug thing, I said, you need to leave my family alone. You need to let them live happy lives and be free of this. And you guys can have me, but don't bother my family, because I'm doing this for them. And they agreed to that. And I think they did leave her alone. And they have left her alone still to this day.
So did her experiences then really stop happening as a young child or an early teen herself? Would you know?
Early teen, because that's when I started working for them.
Yeah.
So they left her alone completely.
So, okay. So when you were you away in some property with them?
Yes. Or I was at some safe house kind of thing in downtown San Jose. They had basically rental, moving vans that they bought. And in the back, it was like they had a bed and they had like a bunch of things like for you set up. So you didn't have to go home because you're running for miles and miles and miles. And I really beat my body up quite a lot at a young age doing all that. So they had those safe houses and they had their own properties in the mountains and throughout town. So they had specific places where I was supposed to stay, and I was constantly under supervision.
And was it just you alone, or did they have other young people?
They had other young people, but unfortunately, all those people that I know from back then all killed. And most of the time they were killed in front of each other or in front of myself. So a lot of them, they didn't make it. And a lot of them were illegal immigrants from Mexico. So nobody was asking questions. There was no paper trail. So when, Jose and my friend Gonzalez, like when they disappeared, nobody knew because they didn't have any family. They came out here on their own from Mexico. So nobody knew to look for them. Nobody really knew who they were. They weren't in the.
So can we just go over that bit again? Because that's pretty horrific and horrendous that people were being killed, and I don't know how they were being killed. We can talk about that if you like. But were they doing this as a kind of a ritual thing, or was this just they'd been as useful as they were ever going to be, and that was it? They were finished with.
It was both things. Sometimes they would set up a ritual, and what they do is they take $100 bills, US dollar bills, and they put down. So for every single reptilian that's going to hurt that person, they have to put $100 bill down on a table or something, like some kind of ceremonial space, and then they stab that person after they basically make that offering of money, which I find very strange and symbolic. And they, cut the person and they beat them, and they subjected me to this ritual as well, but I survived it. And that is a very rare thing because I had never seen anybody else survive that. But yeah, they do that, or they make an example, like you're saying, if they are not following orders, or if they want to stop using, the drugs that they're giving them and stop and get out of the drug business, they will basically kill you just with a gun or whatever they have on hand. If you say, no, I'm not going to do this, and they really don't want to put the time into conditioning you and programming you to listen and follow orders, then they'll just kill you it's usually in front of everyone else that you know that you work with, to make an example.
So, on these events then, how many people would there be in this group, including the victims like yourself or people like yourself and those perpetrators?
The core group would probably be 15. It was a small group that I was dealing with. And so I don't know anybody who's left surviving from that. And they were basically telling all of us, you know, you're not going to be able to live past 20. Just letting you know, like you've made your bed, you're going to lay in it, kind of thing. That's what they used to say to us. You know, don't expect to live past 20. And most of the people I knew from then, they really did not survive. So it is something real, and they are always recruiting high schoolers. So that is something very terrifying for me to think about, that they're always going after young people who are physically able-bodied, very good runners, and do not have any kind of connection to family, or they don't have some kind of person that is really looking after them in a serious way. So some of my friends whose parents were calling them, you know, every 4 hours, there's no way that they were ever going to be recruited, let's say. But for my friends that basically were abandoned by their parents, they just disappear and go into these kinds of programs, and then that's kind of the last that people hear of them.
So were any of these people that were reptilian stroke humans, were they known in the community?
Yes, they were. And I knew people that were aware of the specific reptilians that I was working for. And there was always some kind of story around, you know, some abuse that they were doing towards women, young women, or so they always knew about that kind of thing, but they didn't know about the other things. So, you know, there'd be some girl that I knew from school, and she'd say, yeah, that reptilian, well, they didn't know he was a reptilian. They just knew that they were doing bad things to young women at the time. And that's all that they were known for from the outside that I could tell. And also they knew in a couple cases that there was some younger men that were disappearing, and that these men that were actually shape-shifting reptilians were bragging about the fact that they made them disappear. And people knew about that publicly, but they never looked into it, which I found so strange. But usually because they were Hispanic and they were from Mexico, people didn't really look into that because they didn't have a family. So that's why they didn't look.
Okay, so I mean, I'm trying to even get my head around, you know, what you've been through. I can't even begin to imagine it, quite honestly. And also, as you say, to have come through attacks and physical injuries. I mean, how is your health and your well-being these days?
It's been a struggle with my health, especially in the past few years. There's so much psychological stress and physical stress, and when it's combined, usually, I know you're aware of this, when you're talking to people, it usually manifests in disease, such as you know, some kind of life-threatening illness or cancer. So in my case, I was diagnosed with early stages of cervical cancer, and I actually got that out of my system. But you're still that, you know, as your life goes on. So you're dealing with lack of energy. You know, I have knee problems because they beat me up with a baseball bat and like broke the cartilage in the front of my knee. So there's physical pain and, you know, psychological distress. And I was not dealing with the nicest reptilian beings when I was a child, and my body has definitely suffered as a result. And I found weird scars on my body before, and that kind of also helped me to piece things together about what happened. You know, when my doctors would say, hey, you know, like your knee, like you have broken cartilage on your kneecap. How's that possible? You know, you must have gotten your knee broken and, you know, like it somehow got healed. Like, when did you see a doctor for that? You know, and they're asking me these questions, and I have no idea how to respond.
And that's interesting. It's kind of where I was going with that question too, is, you know, if you sustain sort of near fatal injuries,
yes,
how long did it take you to recover? And if they were expecting you to be dead, then where did you recover? And who tended your injuries?
I think I was so lucky because they dumped me at the side of the road in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and that's the only reason I'm around right now to speak to you or anybody. Because when they dropped me off, they thought I was dying, because I was bleeding so much. When I was being insubordinate, and I said I don't want to do this anymore, then of course they put me through that ritual, and I was bleeding quite a lot, and so they dumped me then. And the last thing I remember from that is that I was actually on a spacecraft, and I was with a Zeta. And from that time, I basically was living with the Zeta, and he's the one that revived me and brought me back to life. So I really was lucky, and it seems like the most impossible thing. And it really is, because I think a lot of people haven't been so fortunate. But what he told me, that Zeta, is that when bodies are dumped, when people are on the verge of dying, sometimes Zetas will come by and they'll take that body and they'll harvest, certain organs and stuff for research. So he was originally picking me up to harvest my organs for research, because I'm sure you're aware that Zetas, they are nearly extinct. So they are learning as much as they can from the human anatomy to see if there's a compatibility to help their species perpetuate and survive. So that actually was a success. He didn't think he'd be able to bring me back to life, but he did. And then from there on, I had a whole adventure off planet, and I was brought back after all of that.
Can you recall anything of details of their smell, things like their teeth, their hands?
Yes. The reptilian shapeshifters, you mean?
Yes, yeah, the reptilians and the different stages, I guess, that they pass through.
The one that I was working for that was involved in the drug trade, he had a very specific look. He looked like he was from some kind of punk era, like in the 60s, and he had never changed his look. It was very strange. And he was always talking about how old he was and flaunting that, and that, this leather jacket is from the 40s. And I'm like, what? Like, how's that possible? Just very strange things. And he had very yellow, disgusting teeth, that one. And his hair was like very balded on the top, and he smelled really bad. He smelled like like when you eat too much meat and you just start to reek like beef. That's what he started to smell like. But then the other reptilian, the one that's specifically targeting me, he's like the opposite. He's like a very clean cut guy. He's very, like, he's shaved, like he's presentable. He doesn't smell like anything. I don't know if it's because he wears cologne, but there's like a difference. You can't really go based on smell, but sometimes it's very obvious that they are not human because they look so strange. Like those teeth, how can they be so yellow, and how can you still have them? How are they not falling out of your mouth?
Yeah. So in his reptilian guys, then, do you remember those details?
The reptilian guys.
When you saw him as a reptilian.
Oh, the features of that. Well, basically, the easiest way to explain that is, what a velociraptor looks like. It's like that, but the arms are longer, and the claws actually are like our hands. They have 5 digits instead of they're usually showing them as like having 4, or it's like, I don't know. The idea that people have is that they have like these very strange, like dinosaur-like hands, but that's actually not true. They're more like a human form, but like a lizard, and standing up like with the anatomy of a velociraptor. And usually when they are fully shapeshifted into that form, they are 6 to 7 feet on average.
Sometimes, I was just going to say, would you say that they had a particular smell?
When they're shapeshifted, yes, they smell like,
as the reptilian, I mean.
Yeah, as the reptilian, they smell like blood. Like they smell like they've been taking a bath in blood, like that nickel smell,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And it's a very pungent smell.
Okay. So their teeth, their hands. Do you remember those details of those guys in their reptilian form?
Claws were usually at least 2 inches or something like that long. Very menacing, scary stuff to see that, like, kind of claw. The hands, I guess, were very long. They're like double human size, and then the claws are even longer, and the feet are curved, with the long claws, the raptor claws, basically. Those were the reptilians I was dealing with. I know that there are different kinds that have different kinds of appearance, and that they're very heavy scales. They're huge scales. They're thick. They're so thick that if you were to try to stab it, it wouldn't. You would probably break your blade. That's how strong their physical bodies were. And I found their only weak spots were underneath their armpits at the time when they were physically harassing me. I started to figure out where their soft spots were for survival and protection. So they're a very menacing force to deal with. Dealing with a malevolent reptilian, usually they are big and they have some size and some strength, some real physical strength that can outdo any human that's even a soldier, I would say.
So when you were having these particular experiences, would you find yourself with them in there as a human, looking like a human being most of the time? And if so, how often did they show you the other being, the other body, the shift?
They didn't show me their other side, their revealed side that often, as much as I would see them in their human form. And I'm not sure why. I think that they found it easier to communicate in a human-looking form, that it was easier to get you to agree to do what they wanted that way.
Okay.
That's what they told me, that they want me to obey better, so they're going to project themselves as a more human-looking thing. But that it's only a hologram or something. That's what they said. It's only a hologram. It's only an illusion that we're actually human, but we're not. That's what they told me.
Okay, well, listen, we'll come back to hear some more in a moment. We'll play, I don't know if Vin will have the bright hours now, or your other song. We'll see how we go with that. But before we do that, we've got Davey from Lossymouth, and he just said, could I ask you, he had a reptilian contact, and he said there were about 12 of these guys, and they were all small, all around 2 feet tall, all teeny, and all lined up apparently in front of him. And he noticed that they seemed to be blinking, rapidly. And he said they almost looked like naughty school kids and being caught doing something wrong. And he says it's almost like he felt that they were coming to him for help. And in his case, he said he felt, that's benevolence. But does that have any relevance for you? Have you heard of anything like that?
From what I understand about the situation, it seems that those are reptilian children, younger reptilians, and the younger reptilians are always testing their boundaries, just like any human child would do. So they approach people who are open, and I think a lot of them are in very difficult and negative situations themselves. So they know that if they come to a human being, that there might be some compassion, some kindness there, because say their reptilian parents might not be exactly nice. It depends on the circumstance, of course, but it seems that they were probably coming to make positive contact. I would imagine, as long as the feeling that he had was positive when he saw them, I would imagine that they were reaching out because they thought, hey, this is a friendly person. Maybe they can help us to feel some love, to feel accepted in this world.
Right. That was just interesting. Well, let's come back and hear a bit more about what you've been doing to kind of work with your own healing, and also talking about implants afterwards, and we'll also talk about this haunted house and the other events that are going on for your colleagues and friends. So I hope that Vin has got a spin as a tune, and we'll take 4 minutes of a little break. Okay, so we're back on air, and we're just talking about Chelsea's Hybrid Summit. We're going to come back to that one in a minute, and I was a bit chopped off there. I'm feeling all right now, though. I'm fine. All back and whole. So Chelsea, someone was asking in the chat room about the eyes, about detail of the eyes, if you can recall or able to recall.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
The reptilian eyes, they're very hard to see when they're in their human cloak. You can't really tell that there's a reptilian eye until they're completely revealed. And what that would look like is something very similar to a snake eye. if you've seen that with the small slit through the middle, and the iris is completely filled. Usually it's white background with like a very slit narrow eye, like cornea, I guess, like the iris is very tiny. It's because they're able to see at night. So their ability to see is way better at night than during the day. And they always wear sunglasses during the day, typically.
Oh, okay. Okay,
Yes.
that's interesting. So let's just talk about now, in your own personal development, you went into, I don't know exactly which different areas of healing, but I know that that's been quite a prominent part of your own development and healing for you and from your experiences. So tell us about the different healing methods that you've been using, and also it also goes into the implant side of things and how you've been able to help people healing from the effect of those.
Yes, I started getting interested in healing when I started using crystals and crystal skulls. And then I found that through the wisdom that the crystals have to offer, there's a certain method that can be applied to psychically remove physical implants. You can kind of trick it with this formula. And I worked with this formula intuitively with some other alien beings such as Zetas. And if you follow the procedure and you use Om or sound healing when applied with crystals, it tends to convince the implant to leave the body on a physical level. So it's like the implant has its own intuition, its own kind of awareness. So if you're able to get around that awareness and tell it, hey, by asserting your sovereignty and saying, I'm going to take every single part of this implant out of my body and every single part of my life, even the parts of my life that I cannot see, like the psychic levels, the emotional levels. You go through all the layers and you can remove it. So I've developed this technique that can remove the physical implant by addressing it through all of the different levels of the psyche and of the physical body and all of the energetic levels of the physical body as well. And the reason why I started really getting into this is because I had physical implants. I had one that we spoke about in the beginning. That's my big reason for coming forward, because it was so painful to have this one particular implant in my arm. There's actually a mark that will probably be there forever. It was like a little capsule, like a pill capsule, was inside my arm, and you could feel it on the surface of the skin. And I knew that is not normal. And I asked plenty of people, well, what do you think this is? And they had no idea. It's not a tumor. It was hard, and you could feel it when you press against it that it was hard. So I was desperate to take this out because I would feel it creating this heat sensation throughout my entire body. It felt like my whole head was full of lava when I woke up in the morning, and I'd feel really sick to my stomach, and I was very unfunctional like the whole day because you're feeling so much heat and tension and pain because of these physical implants, that I just said, okay, enough is enough. I need guidance. Like, how do you take these things out of the physical body without seeing a doctor? Because they're not going to take this seriously. So, that's how the technique came about. And I still use it whenever somebody is in deep need and of healing of these things. And usually it's very physical and obvious. You can scan the body and feel it usually on the surface of the body, but there are ones that are even low, like deeper inside, that might be even underneath the one that is physically implanted as well.
So do you know what the implants were used for then, Chelsea, the reason for being implanted for you in your case?
There are many different kinds of implants that I've found. Most of them are for transmitting information, sort of like just sending information out,
So do you think that's what the case was for you? It was a transmitter?
Transmitter, and there are things that are also receivers. So they're trying to control the body and the functions of the body. So maybe they're trying to mess with your adrenal glands. Maybe they're trying to regulate your blood flow in a certain way. So there's many different kinds of implants, and some of them are trackers, and most of those are in the head.
Okay, so in this, so have you studied several different types of healing per se, or has it been through meditation, or?
It's been through meditation, and I'm also a certified Reiki master and instructor. So I apply Reiki as well to that understanding, of basically working with the subtle energies and with the cleanest energy that you can to bring in whatever is needed for the physical body to help relax it. And anything that's blocking that flow is basically an obstruction that's not allowed to be there. So the whole philosophy behind healing has come from Reiki and crystals and intuition, psychic. And also I've done a lot of research into Buddhist healing methods as well. Lama Zopa Rinpoche wrote an excellent book called Ultimate Healing. And just that principle of understanding, not to attach to a certain kind of thing that is causing you pain or suffering, and to dissolve that, kind of gave me that idea to dissolve the physical implants through your energy, through your intention, and to make your intention so strong that you basically melt it away.
Okay, so are you able to do that with other people as well, or does the other person have to hold the intention, or can you do that with their implants or issues like that?
It's great if somebody can hold that intention that they want to be done with that. They want to be totally free and sovereign from any control, any kind of manipulation to their body whatsoever. And it's actually easier for people to receive it from me than for like that method to be applied to myself, because then there's kind of it's more objective, it's more focused. I can put my focus completely on the person, be attentive to their needs, and all they have to be is open and ready to be done with it. They don't even need to be strong enough to fight against it. Of course, that's going to come after the healing, that they're going to get their power even more embodied, because now they're taking back that space of what was taken out. They get to get back into that part of their body.
Sure. So did you have any consequences of removing then the implants from yourself? Was the monitoring obviously, well, monitoring would obviously be interrupted, so you wouldn't be, I guess, on their radar in the way that you were. So did that have a consequence?
Well, they were pushing back harder at a certain point for myself to reinstall the hardware, let's say, of the implants. And that's when I was talking to you, here and there throughout the years, just that, okay, now they're coming back again and I don't know what to do with this. And basically just talking with you really helped, because it helped me to just boost my understanding and awareness of what was happening to myself, so I could, command myself back into my physical body wherever they were trying to insert themselves into me. So it helped to talk about it. And then from there, they left it alone. I haven't had any physical implants, any kind of implant whatsoever, after I went through very thoroughly scanning my body, applying the method to myself very continuously. There was a time when I was healing myself with this method every single day, just to make sure that nothing could come in. And then after a certain point, they get the point that they cannot come and put that technology back inside of you. And for those that I've helped heal and remove these kinds of implants, they don't come back after a couple times of getting anything removed. They try maybe 1 or 2 times afterwards, but it's not ever as strong or severe as that first time that they put the technology inside.
Okay, so are you still getting as much interaction then these days? I mean, now you've married, you've settled down, in a relationship and all the rest of that, so there's a different dynamic going on. What's happening? What's the status now with that interaction of reptilians?
Well, a day before my marriage, I got approached by the same reptilian that's stalking me, and he said, "It's pointless. I'm never going to give up. I'm never going to stop hunting you." That's specifically what he said. And then I owed him 8 more children, 8 more hybrid children. So I don't think he's ever going to fully give up on some levels, but he...
Did your husband see him?
We had some visitations in Germany, and we could hear them outside on our balcony. We lived in 2 different places in Germany. We moved, and they were always trying to get into our place, or they were knocking on the glass. That seems to be their thing. And they also took a crowbar to our window in the place where I just was living at in Germany, and they tried to separate the frame from the glass because I don't know, they need to somehow have an open entry in order to get in. And my mother actually noticed that when she came to visit me in Germany, that somebody's been trying to break into your window. And we were hearing strange noises in the hallway. And one friend of mine actually heard reptilian voice, like something like Slytherin, speaking in the hallway when he was staying at my place with my husband and I. So he was checking, he couldn't believe it that he actually heard that kind of hissing talk in the hallway when he was staying there at our place. And he became an instant believer after that because he had witnessed that for himself, that that was going on, and that was going on very frequently, and he realized that as well. So we've had confirmation from many different people throughout the years, my husband and I, that these things have been trying to approach to both of us, but they're not able to actually come in now that my husband is there.
Okay, all right. Well, let's just move forward and talk about the reason for your recent call, and that was we were talking about this place in San Jose called Hellier House, and I was doing a little bit of research on that, and it seems that Hellier House has got quite a reputation as a haunted house, and I don't know what else, but it seems there was at least one death there by suicide, and I couldn't work out whether it was true or not, or rumor or not, whether there had in fact been some other deaths there, but it does seem to be occupied from what I've seen. It looks like someone's, because there was a rumor that it hadn't been lived in for many years, but it looks like it is lived in. But still, you've got some friends who have, they live in a property that abuts the backyard of Hellier House. So I'm just going to let you pick up the story from there, and we might get a look at Hellier House in a minute, but we'll see. But let's just hear that story of what's going on with this is your colleagues now, or your co-workers.
So when I was in Germany, I actually received a message from them just once. There's some strange things happening, because I knew about the house before, and I knew that they lived close to this place. And let's just call the reptilian house actually a reptilian den, because that's actually what it is. It's not haunted by some ghost, like people are saying. And if there is some ghost, that should be the last priority in people's minds. This is a very dangerous place, and people feel very, very uncomfortable and very unsafe when they're around this place, and they don't really understand why. It's kind of an intuitive response. And my friends, they lived right next door to this house, and they can see directly across the way into the backyard of this house. And there's a window that's facing their bathroom window, and they can see when the lights are on and they're moving the blinds back. So for the first time, they actually witnessed and saw a physical 3D reptilian in the house watching them, because they've been spying on them for some time. So my friend, it's been getting very scary for her, because they are starting to enter into the house, and they have a lot of lost time, and she's starting to gain actually a little weight, and she had symptoms of pregnancy. So, and she had memory of something forcing itself on top of her on numerous occasions. So we've come to the conclusion, based on all of these things that have been happening with them, that they have been impregnating her with reptilian hybrid children, and they've been taking the children out. And it's kind of been back and forth that we've been monitoring the situation. And they've had friends come over to their house, and they have seen the reptilians looking through the window as well, like completely uncloaked, not like a human looking thing. No, like a very large reptilian. You can see the tail. You can see that they're turning the lights on. They put these weird sirens and alarms on. It's a very intimidating circumstance, and it's very hard to know exactly what to do when you're dealing with this kind of being, and especially when their intentions aren't pure and good, because I know some of them are actually very positive. I've met some positive reptilians before that were very nice and didn't have this kind of malevolent intention. So they've been dealing with this, and I've been trying to serve as an emotional support to them in this time, because I have a very deep understanding of what they're going through on many levels. And this is a lesbian couple, so there's no way that she could be impregnated by anything else other than something like this kind of being.
So is that an assumption you make because they've seen the reptilians, or because they actually have reported that? What's your feeling on that?
They have seen them. Other people have seen them as well. And I have actually been in that facility myself, and I have seen the reptilians there firsthand. So I know that that is the house where these reptilians are. And there are a lot of missing people that are actually still in the Hellier house, from what I understand, from what I can sense.
What do you mean by missing people in the house? Do you mean people have been living in the house and then have not been seen again, or?
It seems that these reptilians have an agenda to abduct. Again, their target group seems to be young women who are from the age of 13 to 19 years old, typically Hispanic, and not like very connected to family. It's the same kind of thing with the whole drug situation. There have been disappearances around that area where people just go missing, and I'm assuming it has something to do with the house because it's an underground base and there's a lot of room down there, and these reptilians have very bad agenda where they consider humans to be kind of like property and treat them very badly. So I'm trying to put things together. I'm doing research as well, trying to figure out exactly what's down there. There are people that do own the house. The house was bought in 1985. So there's something there, but the police cannot enter into the house, and I find that incredibly strange. There was a fire at that house, and the firemen weren't even able to enter into that house. It's completely impenetrable, even for law enforcement. So I would imagine there's something very valuable down there, and very terrifying that even, basically law enforcement is not willing to enter into those grounds. So that is something very concerning, I think, for the local population in San Jose, California.
Have you managed to have a look there yourself at all anytime, or?
You can walk around the outside of the house. You can see that there is definitely security systems that are being maintained. The grounds are being maintained. There's definitely something living there, and people don't really know what it is. They just have weird suspicion, like, what are the people actually doing there? Why do they have these alarms and the sirens going off in the middle of the night? The whole situation is just very strange. There's a lot of resources being put into keeping the house protected, but nobody sees any people walking in and out of that house. So what is it exactly? The only person they see is who they assume to be the owner, who I actually am suspecting is the reptilian that is harassing my friends and impregnating my friends specifically.
So can we just go back to them? What have they actually reported to you in detail about these beings?
They see them actually through the window, like I mentioned. But recently they saw the owner, the groundskeeper. This guy, he looks like an Asian man in his human cloak, if he's a reptilian, I guess. And he was in the backyard recently with a towel around his waist, looking over the fence into their backyard, like naked. So I find that behavior very strange. And why would he be doing that?
But that's nothing to do with the reptilian guy, is it? Is this just somebody who's linked with the house for some other reason? I'm a bit lost on that one.
In the local community, recognize him as the owner of the house, but I don't actually know if that's true or not. But he has been in the backyard, with just a towel around his waist, looking over the fence, looking at them. So that's been the recent development there. And
do your colleagues take this to be some kind of link with a reptilian element, or not?
Yes.
Yes, or just a human being who happens to be there, having had a shower, putting a towel around them.
It's really hard for them to tell, because all that they have a clear memory of is the physical experiences that they've been having in their bedrooms, from what I understand, where something is forcing itself upon one of my friends at night, and they're not able to see it. So I'm not entirely sure. That's their experience, and I have no idea actually all of the specific details. They have been able to see in clear daylight that a reptilian is watching them from the window. So they're assuming because he's watching them all the time, he's watching them when they're in their bathroom, he's watching them when they're in their bedroom. So they don't know what to do. They see this thing like looking through the blinds, and they see that it's not a human. So they're assuming, it has to be this reptilian that's doing this.
Is this this whole concept of reptilian and other dimensionality, for want of a better term, is that a new thing for them? Have they been exposed to this kind of idea before or experience?
They don't have any exposure to this before. The first time that we talked about it was when I went over to their house, and then I realized they were right by the Hellier house. Somebody made a comment, "Oh, you guys live right by the Hellier house," and I was very curious about what that all meant, and I wasn't clear about that this was actually a place that reptilians live at until they started telling me that they were seeing these things. And then I started putting two and two together. Well, the location makes sense with all these other things that I've experienced firsthand, that I am aware, and I've been in that place before, that it is actually a reptilian underground base.
Okay, well that's a strong statement. So
it's taken a long time. It's been over a year that we've been piecing everything together, but now things have really accelerated. They've been having intrusions where there's some kind of man in their house at night, and how is he able to be in the house and then leave seconds afterwards? I don't know any human that can just disappear like that unless he's Superman or something. A couple seconds after he's forcing himself on top of my friend. I don't know what can do that.
Okay, so has she at this point in time then experienced lots of pregnancies, or is it just?
Yes. Okay. It's been several pregnancies in a row since I came back to California. That I'll see her the day before at work, and she'll be a normal weight, and then the next morning she wakes up and her stomach is like already, like, she looks like she's 2 months pregnant. And how's that possible? She can't gain that much weight like overnight, and she's barely eating anything at all to begin with because of all the stress. So we know that something is going on with that.
So how long has that been going on for them?
It's been the past 4 months that they've been dealing with this.
Okay.
But trying to see, like, very, very much becoming aware of it in the past month, that there's some kind of reptilian alien contingent to this whole, mystery pregnancy that's been going on with my friend.
Okay, so have those guys as well, have they had experiences before? The UFO thing, I know that was new to them, but have they seen anything else like that around them, or is this just popped up out of nowhere?
This is new. This is relatively new for them, and it's been taking a lot of work and effort to figure out what's going on in the first place, to know, are they safe in the circumstance? Are they safe living where they are? I don't know. And we just have this whole network now where we're making a commitment to speak to each other every day, because I want to make sure that nobody disappears, and because if it is a dangerous situation, that we feel a lot better when we talk every day, even just to say, hey, how are you? And I realized when you're silent, when something is happening that you have no comprehension, that is the worst killer. You can just disappear because nobody knows what's happening with you. Nobody knows something is dangerous or strange that's happening with you. So they won't know to look for you if something happens. So this is the only kind of strategy that we've come up with in order to deal with this whole thing that's been happening.
Yeah. So just going back to yourself now, Chelsea, where we've got about 15 or so minutes left on the show. Just talking about, you mentioned hybrid children.
Yes.
And that, this being is demanding another 8 of you. So how many did you say, if you haven't already, that you have at the moment, or that you're aware of?
4 reptilian children with that one particular reptilian, and I have one.
So how did these manifest? I mean, did you go to a particular term, sort of how many months or weeks, or did it work like that?
It's a shorter pregnancy period when you're pregnant with hybrid alien children. For reptilians, it's usually 3 months. to 4 months. And for Zeta, it's usually 4 to 5 months at the most. That for the pregnancy period, it's not a longer process like humans, because they're much smaller when they're born.
And how does it work on the birthing process? You hear a lot about human, in the hybrid program, and I'm just wondering if it's the same with the reptilians as well as it is with the others.
The reptilians that come out as eggs, actually, you don't know you're pregnant because it's this very tiny egg inside of you. It's very small, and you gain a little bit of weight, but you think you're just gaining weight for whatever reason, even if you're active. So it's nothing strange. And when it comes out, they take the egg immediately if they don't want you to have any kind of bond with it whatsoever. But usually it's better for the child and their health.
Are you aware of them removing it? And if so, how do they remove that from you? Do you know?
They have different kinds of technology. They have something very similar to forceps, but it can somehow freeze the egg so it doesn't hatch immediately, and so it's not born immediately when it comes out.
So are you talking about through the birth canal?
Yes, through the birth canal. It all happens through the birth canal for all the hybrid children, always, because it's the only way your body can support that kind of pregnancy, from what I can understand. And with the Zeta, it comes out as a normal human baby, but they're much smaller.
Okay. I've heard all kinds of different things on the hybrid child element. There was one case I heard of where the child looked like it had encephalitis, but it had the big eyes, with the very tiny, kind of iconic body, very much like a grey. And I don't know if it was very, very much smaller than a normal human baby. I'm not quite sure of that detail, but it was very, very definitely sort of a fully formed child, as I understand it. So, or being anyway. So, what was the process of things after a birthing then? And would this happen in your home? Would they take you somewhere? How would that work?
I'm still piecing all the memories together with all of the pregnancies that I've had, because obviously it's definitely quite a lot. But usually they're taking you outside of your home, inside of one of their spacecraft, which are Bevas, and they do the procedure there because they usually have specific kinds of drugs and medicine that they need to administer to you while you are giving birth to a hybrid, just to make sure.
And what did you call the craft? I'm sorry? What was
Beva.
Beva.
Yeah,
okay.
That's what they call their spacecraft.
Okay.
Start replacing UFO with Beva, because we have a name for it.
Okay. Yeah, someone was also asking if we could hear a little bit of Andromedan speak as well, or the language of Andromedan. So I don't know whether you feel you could do that as well.
Yeah, okay, I'll give a little sample. Naszym paje patrzeć of Glenau Kubitaye to find out Alshugan with Taya Boss.
And can you translate? Because I definitely didn't know that one.
I said hello to all of you. I hope that you're enjoying our conversation today.
Oh, well, thank you very much. So that is a universal language.
Yes.
Okay. And Andromedan. Okay. We'll have to work on that and see if we can get some images for that as well. Can you write it as well?
Yes. I have some examples of the writing.
Okay. Well, we'll just have to see those at some point.
Okay.
So Chelsea, just before we're going to hie off to the end, we might get a chance to play that second song. What is it that you would like to say to others who are going through any experiences that are difficult?
It's very important to speak out about anything that you're experiencing. It's terrifying to go through it and to remain silent because you're trapped inside of yourself. So even if it seems a bit strange in the beginning, I was terrified before I spoke to you about the implants. I didn't know how to approach. I was very much censoring myself in the beginning. But over time, you really start to realize that you're honoring yourself by speaking to somebody that you trust and that you respect, and you free yourself from the inside. You claim yourself and your happiness, you become your own person. Even if you have just a suspicion, to speak out and speak honestly about what you're experiencing is such a relief. It's the biggest relief I've ever felt in my entire life. Nothing feels more right. So I hope that everyone that has any kind of experience, even if it seems like something just small, if you share it with somebody, it's a beautiful experience, and it's something that you will not regret. Just take the plunge, and you'll see that everything will be perfectly fine.
Okay, well, thanks for that. Someone's just asking, could you repeat what you said? It was so fast, they didn't get a chance to quite catch it. So, would you be up for that? Would you be up for repeating?
No, not exactly. I have to think of something else to say. Yeah, I could speak a different language. I think that would be more useful for people because you do hear it. It's just you cannot break apart the language in that way, like the piece by piece by piece. I can say haita, which is hello, and jatara, which is another thing of just like how are you. So that's something that people can use. Haita, jatara. So I'd rather people have something useful.
Is that, again, the Andromedan that we were hearing?
Yeah, so people can say Haita Jatara. You know, if they want to say use something, they can use that. Hi, how?
Okay. I don't know whether we're just losing you there. We've got a picture just lost from my side, but I think we can still hear. I think we're still there. Okay. So maybe just before we say goodbye, maybe Vin can play your other piece of music, which name just escaped is Otherworld, which is very relevant. So Vin, I don't know whether you can play that for us, and we'll just have a couple of minutes after that when we come back to say thank you very much. That'd be great. Let's see if we're going to get that. Are you there, Vin? Maybe he's not there. Tell us who's that by? It's it is Otherworld, isn't it?
Pendulum, the other side.
The other side, not Otherworld. Okay, all right. Well, listen, we're not hearing the sounds yet, so maybe Vin's gone to make a cup of tea early.
Okay.
And can you tell us anything more about the other worlds that you seem to have been plugging into before we leave?
I spent some time on a planet in Zeta Reticulum where the Zetas come from. It's called Retuban, and they all live underground, which is very sad because there's a lot of nuclear radiation, and I think that's another reason why they are struggling to survive. But it's a very hot planet, and it's very friendly. They have get-togethers where they actually have humans living there that have been brought there by Zetas through, I guess, abduction kinds of scenarios that were willing, and it's a very nice society there. They have a lot of collaboration. They're teaching humans to speak the Zeta language, and the Zetas know how to speak English as well. So it's a very nice place, and I hope someday in the future humanity can go visit and experience that kind of society where it's so balanced and respectful of all kinds of culture and heritage.
So how long do you think humans have been there?
I met somebody that was there from the 50s. That was like the latest that I had. That's like the latest date that somebody had come there from, that they could piece together at least. Because linear time starts to not make sense once you leave our atmosphere. So people can only make sense of things based on their physical health and their physical records of basically dating their bones. It's the only way you can tell how old you are through their technology.
Yeah, no, I just wondered because I remember speaking to, I don't know if you've heard of the Peruvian contactee, Sixto Pazuells, and he was saying that he hasn't experienced any abductions, but he had been on board craft I think it was 2 or 3 times now, I can't remember which it was, for which he had to prepare hugely because he was going consciously and he was going in his full physical body. He wasn't going astrally. So it meant they schooled him for a year in diet and special exercises so to prepare his nervous system for the experience. And I think it was Ganymede, he was telling me. It was one of the moons of Jupiter. Anyway, there he saw around about 12,000 humans, which he was really didn't expect to see. And what he was told was that they were people who had kind of fallen through the dimensional net. So it might be people who had, for example, been lost through the Bermuda Triangle, or, you know, who knows wherever. But it was where those particular humans would die if they were brought back into 3D reality, but would have a chance of living out their lives wherever they were there. And there was quite a big society of them, but I haven't heard that in many other places, so that was interesting.
That absolutely makes sense.
Yeah, okay. Well, I've got, again, somebody in the chat room, they didn't hear you the first time, just saying, could you please repeat the language again? They wanted to hear the sound of it.
The whole statement? Okay. Hi to
Yes,
Josh.
if you can. Yeah.
Hi to Josh. Jaitara. Masutai.
Okay, was that it?
Yeah. I mean, it's very hard to have, you know, I know that, you know, when somebody says, oh, you know how to speak French, can you just give me a sample? And then people just, all they can think to say is like, hi, how are you? How are you doing? You know, and that's just what I said. You know, unless I was having a conversation, you know, it's kind of difficult when it's one way, you know.
Okay.
But I'm doing my best to express this language. And I actually use a lot of this language in bits and pieces on my website, in my monthly posts, just to get people introduced to that language and the way it's written, the way it sounds, the way it changes throughout.
Okay,
you know.
so tell us what your website is.
It's goldenalmachcreation.com, and that's ALMACH, based off of the Andromedan star. And I talk about the DNA and the shifts that are happening on our planet, and basically the healing that is happening with our bodies, and, you know, cleansing ourselves of any distortions, any of this kind of technology that isn't serving our greatest good. So it goes over all that stuff. I have a very particular, specific range that I'm talking about. Basically, I'm bringing that wisdom, everything that I learned when I was off planet, I'm applying to what I'm sharing on my website, and trying to use that to help people with their personal development and feeling whole and complete.
Okay, so is it just one website you have with the blog?
Yes, goldenalmachcreation.com, yes.
All right.
And my husband has his own thing as well, that I collaborate with him.
Okay, maybe you could just write for me in the little message box the name, and I will pass that on. And I just wanted to ask as well, before we sort of really finally wrap up, about your other half now. What's his feeling about all the things that you've been through? Does he know, and is he concerned, or is he okay with it? How is he with all that?
In order for me to have a healthy relationship with somebody, obviously, I have to be able to speak openly and honestly, and I have been able to speak with him about this. This is actually the thing that brought us together. We came together and we talk about all of these things, and we share this together. So he has a total understanding of these things. He has quite an awareness how to handle the situation in a very healthy way. So he's helping me to have a balance and to respect myself and love myself in this process. So he's really helping me to grow and mature and accept myself as I am, and to have the bravery, basically, to come forward and speak about this, because he's on my side and supporting me with this. He knows I'm speaking to you today, and he's very happy about that. So I think it's really important, you know, to be somebody that's a lifelong experiencer, to be with somebody that is open to these kinds of experiences is absolutely essential.
Okay. And your family now, your mum and your sister, how are they around this whole thing now from this distance and time?
we are talking, and that's the best thing. Everything is so positive. Even though these things that I've experienced have been very negative and scary in nature, I see them as such a beautiful experience and opportunity to learn about these things. I don't have to question if this is real. This is my reality, and I feel very blessed by that, because I feel connected to everything that much more deeply. I have a greater appreciation of my family, of all of my family, not just not my human family and, you know, my specific blood family, but also the family that I'm connected to off planet. I see myself as connected to that. I don't need to question if they're real. I know that they're a part of my life, and I know that they're also a part of my extended family as well. And I love that part of who I am, and I totally embrace it now. And you've helped me with that tremendously, to really take that as something positive, you know, because you have to get through the fear factor a little bit in the beginning, like, oh, I don't know, I don't have any control in the situation. And to reach out and talk about it really helps you to anchor into yourself and get strong, knowing who you are and what your life is about.
Okay, well, thank you very much for sharing. I know that it's been a while coming, and a lot of people will have a lot of different thoughts about what you've had to say, and it challenges everybody's reality and basis of beliefs and all that kind of thing. But anyway, for the moment, I'd just like to say thank you very much. And if you want to have a few words just before we close down, before we play ourselves out, then the floor is yours.
I just want to say thank you to you, Joanne, for helping me with everything. It's so amazing, and I feel so grateful to have this community to be able to speak about this and to be embraced is really worth so much. And I really appreciate that people are open to listen to this and to take it seriously, because once we take each other seriously and honor one another in our truth, then we can have real happiness as an entire human species. And I think that's really the point of all of this stuff that's happening. It's for all of us to come together and realize that we're all part of a family, that we create a family, and that we have family connected to us as well, that we're not separate from one another. And we don't have to fear anything, even if it's scary what we're going through. If we just talk about it, it completely makes the situation safe again. And that is such a wonderful thing that you're doing. Giving people the platform and the opportunity to speak about this is completely transformational. And I don't even know what to say. I'm just beyond grateful for all the work that you do.
Well, thank you. It's nice to be noticed now and again.
Of course.
All right, well, thank you everyone for listening and for your comments. I've been noting in the chat room, we're all coming from very different perspectives, and we all have our different truths, and that's the way we'll leave it. So thank you very much. Thanks everybody. Thank you, Vin, again. Fantastic sound earlier on, really woke me up. As Chelsea, enjoy your life, and we will no doubt speak from time to time, and very good luck and congratulations for your new marriage. Vin, PIR, thank you very much for making this platform available. Everyone out there, it's over and out from the Ammach Files on the 16th of June 2015. Good night.
You have been listening to the Ammach Files. The Ammach website is www.ammach.co.uk or www.alienabductionuk.com. The email address is ammach@hotmail.co.uk, and the Ammach mobile helpline number is 0795 1752813. The YouTube channels are the Ammach Project and Ammach UK. The Twitter name is also Ammach UK. Thanks for listening, and if you have enjoyed or found helpful the Ammach presentations so far, please consider supporting this important project and resource by donating what you can. And once again, thanks for listening.